Welcome to This Week in Sports. Today we are talking about the NBA and the NFL. The NFL has just kicked off free agency. The NBA is wrapping up the regular season and moving into the playoffs. And we've got March Madness kicking off, so we've got a lot to talk about. So it is currently March 16th. We are going to do a NFL outlook onto the 2025 season. Now, we are not going to talk about fantasy football implications today. In my mind, it is too early to be talking about fantasy football. However, it's still fun to do, so we might do an episode about that. I want to start with the NFL outlook, looking at the two conferences, the AFC and the NFC. I want to start with the AFC because in reality, there is no point for any of the teams to even try if you are not the Buffalo Bills, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Cincinnati Bengals, or the Baltimore Ravens. Now, for the sake of making things somewhat interesting, I would put the Houston Texans, not the San Diego Chargers, the Los Angeles Chargers, and the Miami Dolphins on that bubble. In that order of the bubble. With it being March, with it being free agency, with the draft coming up next month, I just don't see any point in us discussing or talking about any teams other than really those big four, and maybe we can throw in those other three bubble teams. For the next 5 seasons at a minimum, I would just be looking to tank if I was in the AFC. Maybe not tank, but you are only focused on getting a quarterback. Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. You can't beat them without having another top tier quarterback. And so if I'm any team in the AFC right now, the only thing that gives you a chance to compete against these teams is getting a top tier quarterback. Or building a Philadelphia Eagles-like team where your offensive line and defensive line are just so purely dominant that they can affect the game on both sides of the ball. Defensively, you can get after them to where they don't feel comfortable in the pocket. And then offensively, to where your offensive line is so dominant that your run game can keep them off the field. That is the only way to beat these teams. And so if I am in the AFC, that is the only thing I'm focused on the next 5 to 10 years. Getting a top tier quarterback, or saying, screw it, we're going with Eagles mentality of we're going to get a top 10, top 15 quarterback, and then we will just build the best offensive and defensive line known to man, which is what the Philadelphia Eagles did this last year. In my mind, it's just almost irrelevant for us to follow. Who cares about the Pittsburgh Steelers getting DK Metcalf? Like, who cares? That's not moving the needle at all. Rodgers, if you go to the Steelers, I would not. That is the toughest division in football. So really any of the free agency buzz or anything going on, really irrelevant at this point. Looking at it from a casual sports fan that doesn't have time to waste watching all of this sports content on stuff that's really not going to matter come February. Now, on the flip side, we have the NFC. And I don't want to say it's wide open because I think because the Philadelphia Eagles showed how purely dominant they are considered a favorite going into the season. But compared to the AFC, where you have truthfully only 4 teams that can compete for a Super Bowl. And when I say that compete, the Texans might give you a run. The Chargers might give you a run. The Dolphins might give you a run. But if you were putting money on any of those teams, if you just put all your money between Bills, Chiefs, Bengals, Ravens to make the Super Bowl, you're probably going to be correct. Because I just don't see the Texans getting through 3 of those teams, or Chargers getting through more than 2 or 3 of those teams. So the road to the Super Bowl is just so difficult for anyone in the AFC right now. And for that reason, like I said, if you're not one of those top 4 teams, you might as well just mail it in, or if you can win 1 playoff game, that should be considered a super, super successful season at this point if you're in the AFC. Now, going to the NFC. Similar to where the AFC has 4 top-heavy teams that are just purely dominant and no one else has a shot, the NFC is the exact opposite. There are only 4 teams in the NFC that absolutely have no shot. They are the New York Giants, my Dallas Cowboys, the New Orleans Saints, and we're going to put the Carolina Panthers in that 4th spot for now. But Bryce Young's exciting me. They're a fun watch. I'm rooting for him. But like I said, Super Bowl betting, life on the line. I'm not putting any money on the Panthers whatsoever. Or any of those 4 teams, in fact. And then at the top of the list with the NFC, you've got the Rams, the Eagles, the Vikings, the Packers, and the Lions. And then you've got all these mid-tier teams that truthfully could make a run, could put together a solid season. Just like the Commanders did this last year. The Buccaneers, they've got a fun team. The Seahawks, they are pretty much just becoming a less expensive version of themselves with a slightly improved quarterback and a little bit less candy on the sidelines. Chicago Bears, I don't know. They're still the Bears, but they're putting a team together. Cardinals, don't sleep on them. Kyler Murray can still create. And so every single one of these teams, other than the 4 that I mentioned in the NFC, they have a chance to wreak havoc or really mess up somebody's season in the playoffs. And simply make a dark horse run throughout the season. That's just what makes the NFL so fun. You never know who's going to go into a slump, like the 49ers did last year, or who's going to make that jump like the Commanders did last year. We just never know. However, I would say the AFC is more predictable than ever. The NFC is not wide open, but it is fair game for anyone other than the 4 that I just talked about. 2 free agency signings that I want to talk about that I think aren't getting discussed enough. Mac Jones to the 49ers. That's the first one. If you remember back to that quarterback draft with Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, Trevor Lawrence, and Trey Lance, there were rumblings that some people in the 49ers organization did not want to take Trey Lance. They wanted to take Mac Jones. Interesting that the 49ers just signed him. Brock Purdy's on the last year of his deal. The 49ers are showing that they don't want to pay Purdy immediately. They're waiting. They might pay him next week, who knows. But I do think it's very interesting that they bring in Mac Jones, who they originally wanted, who has shown some glimpses when he was with New England that he could be a decent quarterback when surrounded with the right people and with the right system. This is a sleeper pick. This could be a hot take that Mac Jones is the starting quarterback next season. All it takes is one Brock Purdy injury. Mac Jones gets a couple games and they say, you know what? Mac Jones, you're a 7 out of 10. Brock Purdy, you're an 8 out of 10. But Mac Jones, we can give you a Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold type deal. Or Brock Purdy, we can pay you like Dak Prescott or one of these top guys. They're just going to go with Mac Jones, I think. That is something I don't think is getting discussed enough. The other piece that is not getting talked about enough. Everyone wants to take Aaron Rodgers and just plug him into the Pittsburgh Steelers. But Aaron Rodgers is a very calculated and very smart guy. He looks at Pittsburgh. He looks at Pittsburgh and he thinks to myself, I've got to play the Baltimore Ravens twice a year. I've got to play the Cleveland Browns and Myles Garrett twice a year. And I've got to go through Joe Burrow twice a year. And then come playoff time, I've got to figure out a way to go through Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and the bubble team of the Chargers with Justin Herbert and Harbaugh. That sounds like a gauntlet for Aaron Rodgers at this point in his career. Heck, he couldn't even get out of Green Bay when he was the favorite. So how is he going to get through all those teams when he's not the favorite? That's just a little shot at Aaron Rodgers. I like Rodgers. The team that we are sleeping on here is the Minnesota Vikings. Classic Brett Favre to the Jets and then Brett Favre to the Vikings. But it makes sense for Rodgers to heavily consider them. You're throwing to Justin Jefferson. They've got a great supporting cast. They've got a great offensive coordinator. You play inside of a dome and you go to the NFC that is a little bit more wide open. That's something that I think is very attractive if I'm Aaron Rodgers. And It allows you to give JJ McCarthy another year to develop. He's probably going to get a little bit of action just because Aaron Rodgers is older. He's going to get banged up. You're going to be able to get him some reps as more of a backup position, not as much pressure. Because going into this year for JJ McCarthy, if he can't perform to the level that Sam Darnold did last year, there are going to be a lot of rumblings for a young quarterback. There is going to be a lot of people talking about, did they make the right decision? And you just want to limit distractions as much as possible on any team. Quick thought there. We are summing up these teams' free agencies so far in one or two words. Pittsburgh Steelers, insignificant. Who cares? Those moves aren't getting you anywhere. You don't even have a guy to throw him the ball, and DK Metcalf is maybe a top 15 wide receiver at best. Seattle Seahawks, financially savvy. Let's go get Sam Darnold, who is younger and slightly more athletic, better arm, more upside than Geno Smith, who wants the same, if not more, money than Sam Darnold does. Got rid of DK Metcalf. Expensive, wants to be paid like a top 5 receiver, but he's not. He's a gadget player, in my opinion. What do? They go get Cooper Kupp. Is he on the tail end of his career? Yes, but does he still have something to prove? I think so. This reminds me a lot of a Klay Thompson-like move. Klay Thompson goes to the Mavericks. He's definitely lost a step, but he's reinvigorated. He wants to show that he still is a good, high-quality basketball player. Cooper Kupp wants to go prove that he is a good, high-quality NFL football player. Essentially, he just got his job taken by Puka Nacua, which I know they're friends, but that's got to sting a little bit. So I think the Seahawks are going to be a gritty, scary team. They've got a lot to prove. They've got some hungry guys on their roster, and I like the way that they're headed. Dallas Cowboys, snoozing and losing. All the fans gonna start boozing. Week 3, it's gonna be a rough season. Bengals, Joe, broken. He's gonna get hurt. It's just sad. They need to get this guy an offensive line. Like, I love T. Higgins. I think he's a good player, but I'd rather just go spend that money on some offensive linemen. Go draft some offensive linemen. Don't franchise tag him again and create more of this, dysfunctional offseason. And then you don't want to also give the NFL's leading sack leader the money that he probably deserves. You want to be cheap. Joe broken, poor guy. Rams, Stafford, Rodgers. You put Aaron Rodgers on the Detroit Lions, I don't think we're still talking about him today. However, Matthew Stafford was the best in high school, he was the best in college, and he has shown glimpses of being the best in the NFL. He is one of the more underrated quarterbacks historically. I really hope that we put him above Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers, Tony Romo, kind of that generation of quarterbacks that he was a part of, but we just didn't talk about him because the Lions were such a horrific team and franchise until recently. But Davante Adams coming to the Rams. I really love this Los Angeles Rams storyline of we're going all in this year, one last ride, upgrade from a brittle Cooper Kupp to a end of prime Davante Adams who has a lot to prove. People are wondering, hey, can you do it without Aaron Rodgers? And people are saying that he's a top wide receiver in the league. I mean, he hasn't been since he was in Green Bay. Jefferson's better. Jamar Chase has been better. Cooper Kupp has shown glimpses of being better. Nakua's been better. So I think that this has a lot of great storylines with it. Kyren Williams is a beast. I'm a big Los Angeles Rams fan going into this year. And they essentially gave the Philadelphia Eagles a better game than the Kansas City Chiefs. That's a quick recap on what happened in the NFL this week. And unfortunately, if you're in the AFC and you're not one of those 4 teams, I'm sorry. Chargers, maybe you got some hope. But should be a fun year. I know it's only March. We'll talk NFL draft coming up here soon. And we'll talk about fantasy implications as we approach the NFL season. Shifting gears to the National Basketball Association. It is almost playoff time. It is that time of year again. March Madness is kicking off. The NBA is figuring out what the final seedings are going to look like. The intensity of the games has picked up. We're no longer seeing 3-point shootouts, but teams are actually starting to play winning basketball. They're playing competitively. They're playing defense. So if you have been an NBA hater, time to turn the TV back on because NBA basketball is better than it's ever been. There are so many storylines that I'm going to talk about in a separate video, but I want to talk about this playoff season and who are the favorites going into the 2025 NBA playoffs. In the East, in my opinion, it is the Boston Celtics. They are the heavy favorites. They are such a good team. You watch them play, when they are clicking on all cylinders, they're impossible to guard. All five of them can shoot the three, play defense, and they can beat you in the post, they can beat you in the mid-range, they can beat you from the three. It's exhausting to watch them play because they are just flying around and they play team basketball. I think back to the San Antonio Spurs with Duncan, Ginobili, Kawhi Leonard, Tony Parker. They were a team, and it's really hard to beat great NBA basketball teams. And this is a team. They have so many guys. They have a deep rotation, and you saw it last year in the NBA Finals. The Dallas Mavericks just did not have the dudes to play, to match up against them. They exposed Luka Doncic on the defensive end, and they are going to just run through the Eastern Conference again, in my opinion. However, the only two teams that have a chance are the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Milwaukee Bucks. Milwaukee Bucks because Giannis is one of the best players to ever play the game. Damian Lillard might have one historic playoff run left in the tank. The Cavs, they're a deep team, but I just think that Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown are far better than Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. Tatum and Brown are both bigger and stronger players, and it just comes down to, in my opinion, your best player needs to be a small forward in this league, or it's really tough to make a deep playoff run. The Knicks, they haven't beaten the Celtics or the Cavs, and they've struggled with the Bucks. So the Knicks will make a small run. People will get excited, but really at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the Celtics, Cavs, or Bucks. Heavy favorites with the Boston Celtics. New York Knicks, they're missing a piece. Obviously, they just can't get over that hump to beat these better teams. They can beat all the bad teams, but they need another guy. And the rest of the Eastern Conference is trash, like always. Just weak conference. You know, people are talking about the Pistons. People are talking about the Magic. Dude, a lot of these teams don't even have 500 records. You know, for me to even want to talk about you, or for a casual NBA fan to even waste my time thinking about you, you got to be above 500. Like, you're going to get, come playoff time, you're going to get smacked. So, all right, Western Conference. This is a loaded Western Conference. We've got a few teams that are putting together good seasons with the Houston Rockets and Memphis Grizzlies, but we're just talking about what's most important. Playoff time. Can you raise your game, and can you beat that team in a 7-game series? Oklahoma City Thunder, the Denver Nuggets, Los Angeles Lakers, Golden State Warriors. Bubble, T-Wolves. I'll give the Clippers. I think the Clippers could beat the Rockets or the Grizzlies. So if the matchup hands itself to us, maybe the Clips make a run. But other than that, really, the 4 teams that I think have a chance are Thunder, Nuggets, Lakers, Warriors. Warriors, they are a winning team. Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, Steph Curry. That is a 3-headed monster of guys that don't care who gets the credit. They just want to play basketball. They just want to win games. And I think that they are going to make a run. Lakers, they got Luka Doncic. He carried the Mavs to the NBA Finals last year. You can't ever write him out. It's almost just like having Patrick Mahomes out there. He's going to carry your team, and he has that ability. And now with LeBron James, the all-time greatest team carrier, these guys can carry really any team as far as health pertains. Or as far as, you know, I'd say it's going to come down to, can the Lakers role players get hot? Can they shoot well? And defensively, can they just keep up this intensity? but I'm worried once the playoffs start, they're going to wear down. And in a 7-game series, Luka will get isolated on defense. OKC, they're young, and say what you want, but I just find it really hard when your best player is a smaller point guard with SGA to just make it all the way. I think there's too many landmines with the Timberwolves that can give them fits. The Warriors can give them fits, and I think the Nuggets, people are discounting them. They've got the best player in the world, and I think that would be my favorite is the Denver Nuggets. West is not wide open, but it is going to be a fun NBA playoffs in the Western Conference. All these teams are good, they're competitive, and really the only teams I'm not taking serious are the Houston Rockets and Memphis Grizzlies. If Dallas can sneak in, maybe they can make a little bit of a run. I'm a Mavs guy, so hoping, but not taking them serious. Love to see OKC get over the hump, but until then, they're just the young team that everyone wants to talk about. They've had a great regular season. When the lights turn on and everyone's paying attention, I don't know. I just don't trust them. And that's where we sit going into the middle of March as we close out the regular season.